welcome back to Lauren's Take. Okay, it's been a while, hope everyone's doing well, but I'm finally done. Season 2 of Shadow and Bone. It came out last Thursday. I held it out a little bit. I didn't want to finish it too fast, though I was getting spoilers. Gosh, I got so many spoilers. Y'all were just turning up on Twitter. But anyway, we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about all the things. I'm not going to do a summary like I usually do because there's so much to unpack. All the things that happen, all the moments. I actually took notes whilst watching it, so I'm really, really excited. But before we get started, make sure to subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed already, and let's get into it. Alright, y'all, so a lot to unpack. A lot happened. A lot of things. A lot of couple stuff. Y'all know I'm usually one to focus on like all the love story situations and whatnot. I'm going to spend a lot of time on that because I feel like this whole season we got a lot of moments and a lot of things that I was anticipating from the books, but you know, I will say in terms of plot, you know, it was very similar to, like they said it was going to be more so focused on Siege and Storm and Ruin and Ruin and Rising, right? Yes, Ruin and Rising. And so I knew that going in. I was very sure about that. They also said we still weren't getting any Six of Crows feels, but for some reason, and I saw this a lot on Twitter, many of us were acknowledging, like, why are we talking about things that don't happen until Crooked Kingdom? Like, okay, so there were some interesting choices. So, like, in terms of Shadow and Bone, the Shadow and Bone situation, they're fine. But with the Six of Crows characters, it's like we got a lot more development than I anticipated. And it's not that I was mad at it. I was like, yay, I'm excited. But it's also like, but in the book is like the buildup, you know? So that was like something that was kind of interesting, that it was a lot faster. And when I'm talking about more so developments with Nina and Matthias, developments with Wylan and Jesper, aka Wesper. And even developments with Kinedge, like Kaz and Inedge. Like, it was just like, literally all of our ships from Six of Crows had a moment, and it was like a lot of moments. It wasn't just like one or two. And we already kind of understood why Kaz is named Dirty Hands. We got a lot of background for Micro's characters. We also got some background more so for, I'm trying to think of some other characters we got more background. I mean, I think we got to delve deep into their stories a little bit more, even more so than the Shadow and Bone characters, which I thought was interesting. But I feel like Shadow and Bone, we kind of got to, you know, delve into them in the first the first season. So I think that's probably why. So that was really interesting to see that with the Crows. But within that, there are a lot of moments. So let's look at the moments. That's what I have right here. Literally all of my notes. A ton. And no, I didn't bullet them, but they like spaced them out. We had so much Wesper. Their meeting, I had saw the clip ahead of time, the clip that they had posted. They had posted a Alina, Mal, and Nikolai scene, or really Sturmhond, and they also posted a clip of the 5 of the 6 crows. So I think that was really exciting. I was just like, oh my gosh. Because at first, of course, the crow scene was more so Jesper and Wylan and their introduction. And in that moment, where Wylan is like, Jesper's like, who are you? Why are we meeting it? He was like, Wylan. And I thought that was like, oh, are you saying you've met? Because they have. And it was like really exciting because like, oh, maybe some tea there. And that ended up being a whole thing. Like, that whole fact that they had like actual relations prior to the start of this show, or the storyline in the show, like, that was kind of crazy because I know that wasn't the case in the books. And so it was interesting to me that happened. I don't know why I don't mind it. I think it was funny, but I feel like it kind of connects to, like, I loved all of the Wesper scenes, don't get me wrong, they were amazing. It was just, like, I do agree with other fans in the sense that I think it was too fast, because their whole relationship is, like, kind of, like, we already know what's happening. You know, it's just, like, they're good. It's like they went through literally everything that they went through over the course of the 2 books, and Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom, and it it was done. And I was like, okay, cool, I guess. Yeah. Nina and Matthias, it was like, you know, they only really had 2 scenes together, but there was a dream that Matthias had that I was like, ooh. Ooh. That was, it was scandalous. Very scandalous. And I was like, oh. And there's more tea with that. Like, there's more tea with the actors, Callahan and Danielle, and I'm like, y'all just look it up. There's some tea there. And I'm like, Anyway, the point was, I thought the Nina and Matthias moments, I don't know. I felt like they could have been developed a little bit more because it was like a hint. It was a lot of hints. It was like Matthias, we would see like, I think over the course of the whole season, we only saw him like 5 times. And 2 times he was in a battle scene. He had a moment with Pekka Rollins, like that whole thing. And, yeah, I don't know. It was interesting. And I feel like that whole, you know, now we got to move to Kaz. You know, Kaz literally was just that dude. We really saw why the dude was dirty hands. Yeah. Those scenes were so just, I remember watching in my room, literally on my TV, I have Roku on and it's just bubbles. But anyway, I remember looking at that and I was just like, oh. Like, yes, he was tricking Pekka about Pekka-san, Albie, but ooh. In the pictures that people have, let me see if I could find a picture. Let me see if, okay, so the fandom has gone crazy. Like, look at this. Look at this. Just, like, it was a moment. I was like, there's a lot in here. But it was because I was just like, I think this season showed that Freddie is, and he is definitely Casperker. And they are intertwined. You know, I now can't imagine Kaz without Freddie's face popping up. You know, he really did well with Kaz in season 1, but season 2, I think he just transcended it. Absolutely transcended it. I loved it. I was obsessed. I was totally obsessed, totally there for it. I also loved that in this season, even though it was going into Crooked Kingdom territory, what I liked is we got to see both, like, we saw so different spectrums of Kaz this season. And we saw the bloody, ruthless Kaz, and we saw the tormented Kaz on the inside, that he's struggling, especially with his love for Inej. Y'all, the Inej feels. Whew. I think at one point I literally was shedding a tear. I was just, Amita and Freddie, their chemistry is top notch. And funny story, if you didn't know, they didn't have a chemistry read. And they have that much chemistry on a freaking screen. Like, it's crazy to me. They didn't even have a chemistry read. They were both for cast. And they were Kaz and Inej. And I see it on that screen. And it's amazing. Like, that whole scene, the arm scene, you know, where Inej got, I think, she got shot in the arm? It was either shot or stabbed. I can't remember. But Kaz actually helps her clean it. You know, that's when you know a couple is good. Like, a ship is good. When it is, like, the most minor of things, and most people would be like, that's nothing. To me, that's everything. Because Kaz doesn't touch people. He don't touch them unless he's hurting them, right? And he wears his gloves and whatever. He, you know, tries not to, you know, associate. And we got to see that a lot in this season, too, which I really appreciated. I thought it was nice because a lot of people, they don't know why Kaz is the way Kaz is. And it helped to kind of provide that context, and I appreciated that. I liked how they developed it. But that whole scene was just the tension. He got a knife, cut right through it. It was intense, and I was here for it. And the scene where they were being poisoned by that fog situation when they were in the what's her name? I can't remember her name, but she was another saint, living saint. She's the one who made the sword that ended up killing all of Nichavoya, pretty much. That scene when they're in the house, and it's Kaz, and Edge, Jesper, and his mom. That was so beautiful. Jesper and his mom, and his mom wasn't in there, but yeah, and Tolya, and Wylan was outside. That scene, and Nedge's moment, y'all, that hurt me to the core, because I said, this is the closest we gonna get to a kiss. This is closer to a kiss than we got in the book, like, y'all. And it was so satisfying, even though I knew how it was going to end. Like, I knew they weren't going to kiss. Like, we knew that, right? They don't kiss in the books. For those who have only been watching the show, they don't kiss in the books. The most they do, spoiler alert, I never put a spoiler alert. I'll put one in somehow. But their kiss is at the end of Crooked Kingdom. They're standing side by side, and I think Nedge is about to leave. And Kaz removes his glove. He removes his glove and holds her hand. And it is the most satisfying romantic moment that has ever happened. And I remember crying because it was like, oh, it happened. Yeah, read about all my feelings in a very old review video that I did on Crooked Kingdom years and years ago. But yeah, and Nedge this season, sis was going through stuff. She got hurt a lot, and she let Kaz have it a lot. And I was like, yes, tell him, sis, because he is playing with y'all lives. And it was just so many, like, almost like they literally could have died multiple times, especially in Nedge. And I think that was like, whoo, child, like, we be forgetting that they are still human. They don't seem like it, but they are. And that whole scene was just, you know, when she was basically roasting him, and she's like, why are you doing this? You need to tell me. He was like, Pekka killed my brother. And she was like, then we'll destroy him. And I was like, oh, yes, you will. That was amazing. Love that scene, because it was, I had gotten a spoiler about that ahead of time, but it was perfection. I love that. I also loved how we came into the Dreg situation, but that was interesting, because that's where it's like, there was stuff happening from Crooked Kingdom, but then there was stuff that was happening still you know, this is how Kaz got access to the Dregs. This is how he, you know, he and Nedge met. This is how, you know, that whole process worked and everything. And then, you know, went back to season 1, Kesh, you know, because Nedge leaves at the end of the show, or it's the season, not the show, the end of the season, to go with the new crew that I'll talk about in a bit, where it's, you know, he goes back to Kesh to kind of be an Edge, but not really. Like, she's just going to be like a waitress, whatever. And I don't know. It just messed me up. And we got introduced to the main point of Six of Crows. So I'm really, really excited about that, because I feel like if we get season 3, which I'm really hoping we do, I feel it's going to be very solely about Six of Crows. I feel like it's going to be their moment, or I feel like their plot is going to be more so, this is the book, not, you know, a new plot line that they added in order to kind of correlate the stories. But anyway, yeah. So, great stuff there. Great stuff. But anyway, let's get into the meat of the stuff, right? Let's get into Shadow and Bone. Talked about Six of Crows, and I'll talk about kind of like the inner connections between the Shadow and Bone peeps with the Six of Crows peeps. Oh my gosh. Let's get right into it, shall we? My man, my lovely, now king, Nikolai Lantsov. Okay, so I got to kind of address this. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. I talked about this briefly in the reaction video to Shadow and Bone season 2 trailer. And I'm going to admit, I was worried about the actors that played Nikolai and Tolya, mainly because of their past. If you remember during the time where they were announced, the cast members that were announced, it was Patrick, Lewis, Jack, and the actress who plays Tamar. I think her name is Anna, I want to say, but I'm probably wrong. They were all announced. everyone was obsessed with Jack playing Wylan because yes, right? And I was like, okay, I'm here for everybody. Like, I could see it. I could see it. I mean, I'll be honest. At first, I didn't see it for Nikolai. I don't know why, because watching the show, I was like, oh my gosh, she's Nikolai. It was like perfection. But my excitement for us getting these cast members, you know, was kind of thrown under because I was like, oh, I don't know about these two. And I, you know, it was really tough for me because I was just like, they've done some problematic stuff and I don't know about that. I don't know how I feel about it. It's like kind of hard because it's like, should they be recast? Should they not? And they weren't. And so we just had to kind of keep going, you know, just keep it going. No one's perfect, but it was also like, but they did some problematic stuff. So it was like, you know, take it with a grain of salt. I'm still going to watch the show. I'm still going to support everybody else. I'm not watching it for them. They just come kind of a part of it. But in terms of performance, I'm not saying anything about them as people, and their choices, their past choices. The actor, Patrick, who played Nikolai, y'all, by the end of season 2, your girl was in love with this man. Y'all know I love Nikolai, right? Nikolai has been, as soon as he was introduced, even I liked him, even as Sturmhond in the books in Season Storm. And I was trying to reread Siege of Storm and Ruin and Rising prior to season 2. I didn't finish, but I did reach out and Bone, which was helpful, and I watched season 1 again. But Nikolai is very fresh in my mind because when he's introduced in Siege and Storm and he's in Ruin and Rising, and I read his beautiful books, which are right here, King of Scars and Rule of Wolves, and, you know, I was even more obsessed with him. Like, Nikolai has become seriously one of my favorite characters of all time. Like, genuinely. I love Nikolai. And, you know, I also, of course, was upset about all of this because I'm like, you're playing one of my favorite characters. Do not mess him up, right? Again, why I have to separate them? Because Patrick, he understood the assignment. He came and ate that role. And I was just like, oh my gosh, yes. This is what we are talking about. When you read that book and you know how to act this character, like he had the charisma, he had the humor, he had the regality of, I think that's how you say it, yes, the regality of Nikolai. And it was just perfection. When he was Sturmhond, oh my gosh, when he was first introduced and we really got to see him with Kaz and Jesper first, I thought that was awesome. I love that. I was like, who is this guy? And the fact that he was the one who was kind of, you know, spinning everything because he was trying to get to Alina in season 1. So their whole point of that was Sturmhond, aka Nikolai. And that was so cool. I really loved how they changed that. I really loved how they edited that whole thing so we didn't have that awkward boat scene that takes too long in the book. You know, I loved it. And so as soon as I was introduced, I'm like, oh, okay. So I'm seeing why he was, I'm seeing why he was cast. I'm seeing why he's cast. And as the show went on, like, oh my gosh, he's a phenomenal actor. I have to say that. I really, really loved him as Nikolai. I have no complaints, none. I don't think there was seriously anything wrong with his character at all. I loved him with all I had. I also loved his relationship with how that was developed with Alina, because that is a big point in the book. You know, Nikolai actually falls for Alina at one point, and I don't know if he falls for her is more so she would be convenient. I think he does have feelings for her. I would say that he does have feelings for her. It's just because now I'm a full-on Zoya and Nikolai shipper. Again, for those who have not read the books, if you read King of Scars and Rule of Wolves, like, things change. He's not about Alina. And here's the difference. Alina and Mal, they end up together in the books. But in the show, they've switched it to the point that, you know, Mal comes back and he was like, well, my whole reasoning for being was to just serve as the amplifier. And he's like, I'm gonna go see who I am by myself. If we are supposed to be back together, we will come back and find one another. And I was kind of like, I'm kind of excited about this. I don't know why. I feel like it gives, us a chance to kind of really see Alina and Nikolai potentially as a couple. Potentially, but we also saw that end. I don't know how that's gonna go, y'all. Whew, I don't know how that's gonna go. But anyway, that was like some serious, like, Nikolai, or Patrick as Nikolai, perfection. Have no complaints. Tamar and Tolya. Tamar loved her. She was so precious. Loved her. She was just so endearing. I don't know what it was. I just loved Tamar. And Tolya, I don't know. I liked him more later in the show. I think he was too much. He was doing too much. A little bit. That actor who played Lewis. I think he was doing a little too much. Just simply because in the books, Tolya is like, he's a man of very few words, right? Like, he does not speak a lot. And because of that, I was just kind of like, what are we doing here? Like, what's happening here, Lewis? What are we doing? And I think that was like something that was kind of like, where Patrick, I was like, oh my gosh, you did it. Tolya, I was like, you're doing a little too much, right? Like, I think they're adding too much into your character, or you're impersonating your character too much and whatever. Like, the poetry bits, those were funny. I enjoyed that. And, he was definitely, fighting, doing the thing. And I was like, okay. You got it. It's just, you're acting. More like, I think it was more like probably Lewis than it was Tolya. Tolya is just not that guy who's like all up in your face, like, yeah, man, what's good? He's not like that. How I read him. I read him more as like a brooding type, but not one who talks a lot. And even when he talks, he's not talking much. So I think that's something that we really have to kind of think about. And that was something that I was kind of disappointed in. But it wasn't so bad to the point that I was like, oh, I hate it. Like I hated his character or anything. It was just like, it was kind of annoying at times because he was just doing too much. He was just the macho guy. And I was just like, kind of over it. But I don't want you all to think that I like disliked his character. It was just, he was doing a lot. And I was like, this isn't necessary, but you're cool. But yeah, so those are our main three. Those were like the new additions. Nadia ended up having a bigger part in this season, which was really cool. And her brother Adric. I was so excited when Adric was introduced. I couldn't remember if Adric was introduced to Siege of Storm or Ruin and Rising, but I think it was Siege of Storm. And so they did hold the arm thing situation. Also, what was different? Both Nikolai's brother and his dad died. I don't remember his dad dying. Unless I misread that. But I don't remember. I remember Nikolai sending away his parents after he found out what his dad did to Genya. And as he should have. But yeah. So his dad was like still very much ill from the poison that Genya gave him. Slowly. Or killing him slowly. And, that whole scene was intense. That was intense. I'm going to say that was episode 4 or 5 when all that happened. And I was like, oh my gosh. But yeah, so that was intense. Let's get to our main characters in Shadow and Bone. I'm all over the place, y'all. I love Zoya. I'll talk about Zoya and Genya real quick. Zoya, oh my gosh, love her. And I loved how, I feel because we do have King of Scars and Rule of Wolves, which, take place in Nikolai, Zoya, and Nina's perspectives, we get to see the other side of Zoya, because in the original books, we don't get that moment often. We see it more in Ruin and Rising, but, like, sis is, like, shady almost the whole time. I feel like in this show, they're giving her a softer side and a more, you understand why she's been the way that she's been. And we also see, with stupid Darkling expanding the fold to destroy Novosibirsk, that whole moment, she's like, you pretty much killed my family, so I'm done with you. And I was like, yes, queen, yes. So, I love Zoya in that aspect. That was something that was in the last season, and it continued into this season. And I just love the actress who plays Zoya. Oh my gosh, she's amazing. And I feel like, though, I love it, but I also want her to have a little more agency. I want them to give her more agency. So maybe in the next season, especially with Alina at the end, I love how I'm jumping ahead. Alina giving Zoya and Genya leadership roles within the Second Army. I hope to see that side of Zoya come out. So the General Nadzialinsky, as we see her in King of Scars and Rule of Wolves, and really see kind of her be kind of like the right-hand woman of Nikolai. But again, we gotta come back, because, wait, before I get there, Jinya. Okay, my main problem, why the heck did they kill David this early? Like, what? That was and the whole thing with David and Jinya, like, they had their moments and everything, but in King of Scars and Rule of Wolves, they get married. I mean, yes, David is killed the day they get married, but they get married and they're together. Like, they're together through, like, I think a quarter into Rule of Wolves, almost a halfway into Rule of Wolves. So it's like, why y'all do this to David? Like, it hurt. That hurt. I was just like, no. And the whole thing, because I feel like why that scene was so tragic, because you kind of knew he was going to die. It was him, putting her out of harm's way. And she's like, no, David. Like, the actress who played Jinya, Daisy, oh my gosh, sis. Like, you need an award, because, whoo, I had to, like, turn it down because it was so painful to hear. It was painful to hear because you could hear the pain in her voice and you're just like, oh my gosh, like, this is intense. Like, the love that Jinya had for David, like, you could see that in that. So her performance was amazing. But again, coming back to the whole David Jinya situation, and Jinya, how she ended up getting the scar on her face, pretty much losing her eyesight in her, what eye would it be? I think it was her right eye. Yeah, it was her right eye. To see that it was Anitra Voya and David pretty much left her. That was tough to watch because it was like, we know you had to run away, and she wanted him to run away, but it was also like, dude, no. But it's one of those really tough situations because it's like, if he hadn't run away, then they wouldn't have known what was happening with the Darkling. But at the same time, it's like, if he hadn't run away, he probably would have died on top of that, so it's one of those tough situations that we don't really know what to think. We don't know what to say. We don't know how to feel. And it was tough. It was really tough having to deal with that. But, anyway, I feel it was just sad with David and Jinya because it was like, we got them really together for a season. We got like, I think 1 or 2 kisses, and they were very passionate, and it was just like, because I really did not see them killing off David this early. That was one thing that I was like, oh no, we should have at least gotten into season 3 or season 4. Like, I don't know how I'm thinking how the show is going, but like, they pretty much solved that whole thing. But I'm like, David survives past Shadow and Bone. He survives past it. He dies in the second spinoff. But again, that's even a year and a half after the events of Shadow and Bone. So I think that's kind of where I was like, I don't know. But yeah. Let's get to our main 3. Alina, Mal, and the Darkling. AKA General Kerrigan. Alright. So, okay. Coming back, I had to apologize to Ben Barnes because I rewatched season 1, and I think I had just forgotten. I think I had gone back to how I felt before season 1 came out, which is like, I don't know about this guy as a Darkling. I rewatched season 1, and I was like, oh my gosh, she's the perfect Darkling. Like, what are you talking about? Like, when you reread it, and I had reread Shadow and Bone by the point I was watching the show. I was watching it and reading it at the same time, pretty much. But after reading a lot of it and then getting to, his scenes in the show, I was just like, no, he was like the perfect Darkling. Like, I think the difference is just age, but I think it's also like all of the characters are aged up, so it wasn't fair of me to say that. So I apologize to you, Ben Barnes. Please forgive me. I love you as a Darkling, and I just love you as a person. You seem like a fun guy. But anyway, in season 2, Lord, did Alina go through stuff. Like, I was just like, goodness, girl. Like, it was just a whole nother vibe, but I think she was embodying Alina in the text. Alina's kind of going through this power grab in a way, but not as, like, the Darkling would. I think what was also really interesting is the Darkling in his mindset was just, like, so twisted. He's such a manipulative guy. He really is. And there were certain scenes that I was just like, this guy, really? Like, let me see if I can find it. And no, I didn't write it, but he was saying just some dumb stuff. Like, just dumb stuff. Like, seriously, I was just like, why is this guy? Oh, this is what he said. And this is like his like last scene in the show, or in the season. And he's like, let me be your monster. And there is no light without darkness. And I was like, boy, just shut up. Like, ugh. He's so infuriating, but it's like, he's really brainwashed to himself. Like, he's brainwashed himself to really believe that he is not bad. Like, he is doing it to help her. And like, in that whole scene where he was like, you know, I had never felt more lonely. You know, I felt lonely my whole life except for one time, and it was when he had Alina, because Alina's the only other person who can sympathize with him. So it's like those hard moments where you're like, you're so bad, but it's sad because you want him to have that, but it's also like, you don't, because he's been a horrible guy. And, you know, Alina's just like not having it. And I'm glad she never fell out, you know. They had their, you know, the kind of flashback moments that are really prevalent in Ruin and Rising. Not as many as I had expected, but, you know, those scenes were really pivotal. And I think that moment where, you know, Alina goes in to try to kill him because he really, you know, the fact that he was so entranced by Alina, like, that's very prevalent in the book. But I think seeing it is also just like, whew, you know, and just, yeah, like, Alina, I was very proud of sis. She, like, really came into her own, you know, once she got the power of the C-Whip amplifier, she was really doing the thing. She was doing the thing. She was breaking down stuff. She was ready to go. I don't know what I was doing there. But yeah, like, I think that was something that was really, really awesome and really great to be able to see her growth over the season. In that last moment with her and Mal, you know, Mal, of course, ends up being the Firebird. He is the last amplifier that they have been looking for. In that whole scene, I had forgotten that. I knew he had played a role in it. I knew he died and I came back, but I knew it was because he was connected to the amplifier. But that's what it was. And it was, you know, so, yeah. You guys know how I love Archie Renault as Mal. He's just, oh my gosh. The guy is beautiful, but it's like, him as Mal is just perfection, you know? And how he's all about Alina. And, you know, I feel like, you know, in the end, especially when Mal gets to that point, I'm skipping all over the place because I just want to focus on the things that I really valued in the season. This is already going to be a long video. But I feel what I really liked about Mal was the fact that he really was like, you know, Alina, I know, you know, I love you, but I don't know if I really love you. I love you because we were brought together. Why is her past all of those orphanages to get to the one in Karamzin? And it's just, gosh, the way I say it, God, American accent. Like, it was like, Karamzin. Like, gosh, why did it sound like that? Karamzin. You know, how to have the accent. I just thought that scene was, like, so pivotal and so meaningful. Like, a lot of people would have been like, but I was like, but he's kind of right. And I had been thinking that while I was watching the show, and I said, he's literally just being kind of like her side piece. Like, it's kind of reversed because a lot of times, unfortunately, women are like that. So it was different with the guy being like that, but it's also like, he has something to bring. Like, Mal is a very talented, capable guy, and so he deserves an opportunity, and he feels like he's just kind of strung along the ride, and I get it. But I also appreciate Alina just like, no, I'm not trying to do that. Like, she's always caring about him, but I feel like Alina, her love for Mal was also blinding her in a lot of situations in which she wasn't seeing the whole capability. She was just like, oh, I can do this and have Mal and do this and that. In this situation, it just wasn't, it wasn't going to be that way. And it was sad. It was definitely sad, but it was also like, I think they need this time to be apart, to kind of figure out what they want to do with their lives and whatnot. And so I appreciated that kind of concept and that conversation that was in this season. So that was really, really good. And the Darkling, he finally died. For now. I say that because if you've read King of Scars and Bullet Wolves, we will know if that's true or not. But yeah, I loved all of that. I loved it all. And yeah, I love, I'll talk real quick about the intersections of the Shadow and Bone characters with the Six of Crows characters and plot lines. What I liked about this season is we got a lot more just Six of Crows situations happening. Again, they were kind of made up. But like there was a whole episode pretty much dedicated towards them. And, we've all been talking about the fan art, or not the fan art, the graphic on episode 5, I believe, where it's just the crows, and it's so nice. It's so cool. I'm just like, oh, my crows. Yeah, I love those guys so much. I love them all. They are amazing. And, Kaz, in that scene, him taking, back his club from Pekka, or, earning the respect Pekka had just tried to get, him tricking Pekka so easily. Oh my gosh. And he went through it. He went through it to prove a point. That scene was amazing. I said, this is top tier level stuff. And, I loved having the connection with Tolya, with the majority of the crows. That was really, really fun and really cool to see that. And Zoya as well. See Nina and Zoya. Oh my gosh. Nina and Zoya connecting, which is something we, they hint at a lot in Six of Crows, as well as King of Scars and Rule of Wolves and their connections and whatnot. And so it was so nice to be able to see that and see how they're, they're not the biggest fans of each other, but they got each other's back. And I really love seeing that. I really loved seeing... So at the end, of course, Mal goes off on the Volvolkny, Sturmhand's former ship, and he assumes the role as Sturmhand as Nikolai wants him to. And I love that whole scene too. The Nikolai Mal, oh, that was great. And I love how they had each other's back. That was a nice touch. But Tolya, Anej ends up going with them on the Volvolkny to join, Sturmhand's crew. And sorry, real quick, gotta talk about like a lot of the longing stares that Kaz had for Anej and waiting for her, and when she got hurt, because she got hurt a couple times, like he was so worried. And the fact that Anej technically was the one to bring him out of his nightmare in the poison situation, that was important. And oh my goodness. And we had to talk about their final scene where Cass finally... I wrote this whole scene, y'all. I'm not even kidding, in my notes, because I was like, oh my gosh. And, so Anej is like, I'ma leave, because he pays off her indenture and everything, like, it's all good. And, she's about to leave because she was like, is there anything you want? And he was staring at her, like, he was like, I want you. But he was like, just want to be buried in the, pots of gold or something like that. She was like, of course more gold. And then she ends up leaving, or tries to leave. And he grabs her. He's like, stay. Stay in Katadam. Stay with me. And she said, and what would be the point? And I was like, ooh. And he said, I want you to. I want you. And I was like, huh? Because that is such an important scene in the books. And I was just like, oh my gosh. And I knew it was coming. So when it actually happened, I was like, oh my gosh. And she was like, the iconic line, I will have you without your armor, Kazbreka. Or I will not have you at all. We died. That scene, Amita and Freddie ate. Like, they ate that scene up. It was so good. And I was just like, I'm like, darn it, Kaz. And then, Anej walks off, and they just zoom in on Freddie's face as Kaz. And he is just, like, literally distraught in a Kaz way. And it is, whoo, child. Because he looks down at his hands. And he just looks there, and he looks like he's going to cry. And I was like, is he crying? He's not crying, but, like, the dude is upset. Like, he's upset with himself. But he's like, he can't blame her because he's like, it's not fair for me to ask her that. So I was like, oh my gosh. Like, talk about pain. So, I'm excited for season 3 to see this whole Six of Crows situation because... I've been hearing a lot of potential, there may be a spinoff, so then we can focus on, like, I guess, King of Scars and Shadow, but I like combining them because I like the connections amongst the two. But anyway, I think that was kind of like the really cool aspects of them. But yeah, I'm trying to think of any other overlap. There was one scene in particular that was amazing. I think when they were battling that final Nichevoya, and then Nichevoya ends up, giving Nikolai a little bit. So I was shocked they didn't show that whole, Nikolai being kind of transformed into a Nichevoya, which is in the book. I mean, he's not like an intense Nichevoya, but he's pretty much a Nichevoya. But the way they had created the Nichevoya were very different than I anticipated. I was like, oh, okay. But anyway, it's like that whole scene where, here it is. It's like so awesome. It's like, oh my gosh, that scene where they were, going up against the Grisha who were extra amplified, like I said, the crows coming for support, i.e. Wylan, Jesper, and Kaz being the absolute badasses, and Nikolai dealing the final blow. Oh, how I am in love with this scene. Like, I was obsessed. I was like, now that is how you do television. It was perfection. Because it was like Jesper being the amazing duress he is, and, doing the sharpshooting things, Wylan coming in with the bomb out of nowhere, and we're like, oh yes. And then I don't know what it was. It was a complicated name, but that thing, how it tricked them and ended up helping save the day. Kaz put the cane there that stopped the person from doing the worst they possibly could have, and then Nikolai right there killed Dudley. I was like, oh my gosh, that is perfection. I was very, 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 very happy with that scene. It was so fun to watch, so great to be able to see that. And I also loved the standoff situation. Let me see. Yeah, that whole scene at the beginning of episode 8 with all the male crows, Tolya, Tamar, Nikolai, Nadia, and Adric. Gang. Like, there was one one shot of them, and I was just like, yes! Like, they were just, oh, I'm so excited. But yeah, okay, so, I think that's it. I will give season 2 5 stars. 5 out of 5. I loved it. I absolutely loved it. There was literally nothing I would have changed. I liked the different switch ups, again, with adaptations. I used to be really harsh in the past. I'm like, this wasn't like the book. They're not going to be exactly like the book. I have to reason that. I get that now. But I do like when they try to stay as close to the books as they can. And I still think Shadow and Bone really tries to take its time truly developing these stories. They kind of switch it up a little bit to fit the plot line that they're trying to do. But I really loved it. I really loved all of the new additions to the cast, so Wylan and Nikolai and Tamar and Tolya and Adric, and there were more people that I really loved seeing as well. I loved being able to see the crows really together this time. Nina wasn't around them as often. Like, she was with them like for a split second in season 1, but to be able to see that dynamic. And so next season, I'm really excited to see Matthias a part of that. I hope, they finally get him out and everything. Oh, that was a whole nother situation, but yeah. But I really loved this season. I think it was phenomenal. I really hope that we get a season 3. Please stream if you haven't. I mean, if you're watching this, I hope you did stream. But anyway, yeah. So, you're giving it a 5 out of 5 stars rating. But anyway, that concludes this video. I know it's been long, but thanks for sticking around and watching. Please give this video a big thumbs up. Don't give it a thumbs down. That's just rude. Also, subscribe if you're not subscribed already. And I shall see you in the next one. All right. Bye.